And this is another episode of Farther Down the Rabbit Hole. And what this is it's going to be a wrap-up of, I guess you'd say, sort of a marathon conference call with Webster Tarpley, Molly in Pennsylvania, and John Galino in Puerto Rico. Right now we have Molly on the line, and we were just sort of discussing. I wanted to call her up to make sure she was okay because she's campaigning for the Obama campaign. And she put a video up that people really, really like. I mean, they really like that lady, Molly, and I was very touched by what she said about nonviolent communication. So let's just kind of carry on what we were discussing, and I'll let you take over, Molly, and we can comment.
Well, I think that Webster brings up some interesting points, and the unfortunate conclusion is that the lesser of the two evils seems to be John McCain and sort of the neocon, arch conservatism that his party is presenting. But I just think there's got to be a better solution.
Yeah, well, his analysis is that it's better to have a Democratic president and a Republican Congress, or a Democratic Congress and a Republican president. Because if you have, if both the Congress and the president are of one party, in this case, given these two candidates, then you'll have just fascism outright, or something to that effect.
Well, you don't have any checks and balances.
When she talks, pull that down.
I mean, the only thing good about that is that then all the responsibility does go to one party, and so that way, instead of being able to blame the other person when, the other faction when things go wrong, they take full responsibility. So I think that's one aspect to it.
I mean, I don't see how I mean, it just looks like whatever the polls are saying. The image is that Obama's the next president. I mean, he's getting all his favorable press. I think the debates went his way.
Well, I mean, to me, he just appears more presidential and less aggressive. I mean, I just don't see this sort of rabid fascist dictator in Obama, but I mean, maybe he just has a great cover. I don't know.
Oh, here's what encouraged me or made me realize. Sorry, I'm eating my lunch here, but I just had to turn the cameras on again, listening to you and Posr. But we worked pretty hard on Sunday with Norman Kurland and Robert Ashford on binary economics. And I was just really encouraged that there are answers out there. And I'm just, thinking, why do we not go to them, and why is it that people aren't able to work together? I know all these great people, Carl Pearson. I thought that Posr brought up to Webster when he wanted to sort of poo-poo 9/11, how important it would be if you had Office of City Attorney General. So I didn't feel discouraged.
Well, I mean, once again, Office of City Attorney is just, I mean, it's almost too much at the grassroots level when you're dealing with these situations that, are national and international of influence.
Except that, that City Attorney General post is a result of home rule, right? That you put out a petition, enough people sign the petition, put the issue on the ballot. It doesn't matter what the local politicians say or do. It goes on there. So if you can establish something by home rule, and especially something like a City Attorney General, but if you can establish anything by home rule, then if you start to develop this culture of home rule where people are voting for what they want to see on the ballot, then you're starting to build a structure, at least a political structure, that can implement whatever it is that the people want implemented. And that's what I think is important about the city attorney general. On top of the fact that, he wants to resurrect a 911 commission, and so if you had home rule and a city attorney general here, you could have a new 911 investigation because it happened here. That had subpoena power, and that's kind of more people controlled than that commission, which didn't examine a lot of things that that weren't examined.
Yeah, what Posr was saying is that if you use one thing for home rule, then it will grow for more things for home rule,
right.
each event. So you're only using 9/11 just as a sterling example of abuse against the people that wasn't investigated.
Yeah, I just see that all of these structures can be subject to corruption, and that's really kind of what I see as the real issue here is how do you really take our country back? And I know that this is another way of doing it, but
well, in my opinion, we should all be voting on every law that comes down. As really the only way to take it back is that everybody gets to vote on every law, because otherwise you've got the same bunch of corporately sponsored people, making laws for the corporations that are not in the interest of the people. And
I agree, but most people don't seem to be that informed on the laws, and I feel like it's difficult to even get good information, even if you are trying to be informed.
Well, even if most people are not informed on the laws, all that means is we can do no worse than what's happening now.
I called to Webster's attention. Whenever I hear a scapegoat, I get concerned. And there was that name, Bill Ayers?
Bill Ayers, yeah.
Bill Ayers. You guys were having a nice discussion on that.
Well, I sort of feel like if Obama is in collusion with these, unsavory Bill Ayers and that annoying, minister, wouldn't you think he would have severed ties with him much earlier so he wouldn't have let himself be so vulnerable to attacks? Because it just seems like such an obvious sort of paper trail in a way, or I don't know if that's the right term, but
right.
It's so easy to trace him back to that. I mean, that just seems like incredible stupidity on his part.
What do you think?
Yeah, I don't see how it would help his campaign. I don't see it. But then again, if you're doing a campaign, maybe you want to throw in something negative that you can overcome. Just thinking out loud, I guess. But yeah, it does seem like a liability. I want to give my opponent the least amount of ammunition possible to go after me.
I mean, I just don't think he's that arrogant to think he's a shoo-in, especially because at the time, Hillary seemed like the shoo-in. Before he was running against her, this all happened.
What if there's a chance that there was some dirty deal that was presented that even Hillary couldn't take, and that there's something on Obama that made him do that? I mean, this is what I told Webster. I said, of all the provocative things I put forward, the most heat I get is when I bring up anything about his sex life, and, I think that William Wright is his lover, and then Webster threw in that thing about fascism talks against women, so then you bring up homosexuality as if it'll be against women. So whenever I hear that, too...
I heard him say anything against women. I mean, okay, fine, he may have said some things about Hillary, but I didn't see that as sort of anti-women, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I saw it more as anti the opponent, I don't get the opinion that he's anti-women.
Well, he talked about the history, right? The history of there being a history of, involved in being anti-woman. I I don't think most people get that sense. I don't get that sense. You know, we just. But
I'm just saying there are these kind of hot spots when you're just sort of coming in on focusing on a topic, and then you get distracted. And even when the woman issue came up, I guess I've never felt that. So I haven't put that. I haven't felt that because I haven't succeeded in certain things, it was because I was a woman. So maybe I wasn't sensitive that way. But, you know, is there a possibility that people could, in politics, not be talking about certain things because if they do, they feel threatened?
Like, give me a concrete example. It sounds too
Someone's going to say, I'm going to tell everybody that you're a lover with this Reverend Wright, you know? And so
they said that he had a homosexual relationship with her?
Yeah. That's what I heard. I can't remember if it was Webster or someone else, and the only reason I declined to do it is because I said, unless you can put something positive on the table, I don't want to break people's hearts unnecessarily. I'll break people's hearts if I feel that it will make their heart grow bigger in the long run. And I'm very excited about this binary model. And again, I felt that if I go through it now, I can have Norman look at it, and we can start to critique it, because he says, unless you have an economic platform, a better one, let's keep this country divided. So I guess that was a strategy. Or maybe he's not showing his hand, that he hopes for something like that, where you have thoughtful people who realize that you can't have a society that produces and doesn't consume. You know, ownership that is in the hands of very few means that the consumption isn't possible. They can't consume. So if you're producing, they can't consume. So you're going to stop certain kinds of production because there's not consumption there, even though it's possible to do it. And that you shouldn't shame people into thinking consumption is the problem.
Well, you know, Webster was talking about the New Deal, you know, wiping out derivatives and the New Deal, whereas I guess some bailouts, any bailout that would happen would go to, you know, people instead of corporations. I think that there just has to be, you know, we may have to go to ground zero on the corporate level, you know, on the economic level, before something, an economic system that's viable.
Yeah, I think that's right. Is that the New Deal?
Well, I didn't get his actual perspective on what the New Deal was, but
well, he's talking about basically not just helping the corporation, you know, to actually help people as opposed to the corporation. And I just see that by tearing down the entire structure that we have, going to get some sort of a Mad Max kind of survivalist mentality, and I don't think that's particularly productive either. I mean, I think that if you give these guys no place to go, then they're just going to tear everything down.
Well, I think if there's, you know, like, you know, because this binary economics, the way I understand it, or at least as little as I do, has to do with giving, you know, the rank and file person credit to invest in companies, and also supporting the idea of employees owning part of the company. And in this way, you know, rank and file people have some of the ownership of the profits of the labor.
And it's not charity.
Right, I agree. However, you know, how do you ensure that the people that are actually running these corporations are actually sharing? You know, I just don't feel like we're running these corporations with any kind of integrity.
Hello, I think I think we're fading out here.
No, I'm still here. I just had a call coming in, and I'm ignoring it.
The answer is Paris Hilton has somebody managing her stuff. She's not running the corporations that she has ownership in.
I'm not saying that people don't have money managers that are running things for them. I'm saying that, Willie Nelson had people doing things for him too, and he ended up like dead broke. You have to stay involved, and there has to be oversight. There has to be some kind of checks and balance with people that are informed and that really understand the system.
Well, see, this is where I think that home rule movement kind of comes in, because, Wall Street was deregulated, and that was how much of the problem that's here today happens, because of that deregulation, if I understand it correctly. So if you have, kind of a system of home rule, most people, most investors would have been for the regulation that stopped all this corporate thievery and this lying.
You don't know that because there's also the greed factor. People, if they're told by the management that they'll make more money with less regulation, which is kind of what the Republicans sort of promote, deregulation is going to mean the market is going to be able to act more freely, then, it's one of these things that people want to make a lot of money. So they think, oh, great, deregulation is going to make me money, but it's then you lose everything.
Yeah, but that's when you need a plan. If the Republicans say that, there's no plan, but if you actually have a plan to acquire capital with the earnings of future capital in the same way that corporations do it, there's a plan. That's why, to me, in the long run, I don't see either party as doing anything except obfuscating that. And I think when Posr brought up, why is the Obama campaign not pointing out that McCain was involved in this, SNL debacle? That's highly suspect. It makes it look like, they're both distractors. And that was the point when Webster starts veering off to saying, well, of course we know that it was the intelligence community that did 9/11. And I expressed myself as best as I could that I just didn't go there. But I also take 9/11 with a grain of salt. I think, to me, it's a very important spice to my work. But I think Posr constantly bringing up the value of City Attorney General is very important, because he hasn't had a lot of background in the 9/11 truth, but he certainly has in the prison reform.
Right.
And I think Webster, I think at one point I had brought that up, and he wasn't paying so much attention to that. He said you have to keep in mind the bigger picture or the context. But I think home rule, the reason it's growing is it's because you're just so frustrated that whatever's going on in Washington is so remote. But
or not just remote, but difficult to have an impact on.
Yeah.
I think that prison reform is essential because, when we're spending so much money, what is it? We're spending more money on the prison system than on the education system?
Right.
I think that's do you realize how much money is spent on the education system?
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden you realize that's just a phenomenal amount of money that's being wasted, and resources, human resources. I mean, there are people in there that, it's
oh, yeah. Okay. Absolutely. We don't have access to the country's full potential because of that. It's interesting when you say that we're spending more money on prisons and education, with Marshall Rosenberg saying that punishment and reward never works. It seems to be the result of a style of communication that we use, that people are actually trained to go in a certain direction, and even compliments can be just as damaging to figuring out a deeper relationship with someone, because you don't know what needs have or haven't been met when they just sort of slap on all these compliments. it actually creates a distance and a disconnect. And I think that's the grief that our society is going through, is that we're disconnected. We have so many people in prison, and that has got to be the fullest expression of a reward-punishment society. The rewards then go to those who are making money with these financial manipulations, but it's not really connected with social contribution. As a matter of fact, it's usually achieved with a lot of guilt. And then they hide behind their PR people who run these campaigns that consumption is bad and it makes people feel guilty. And I'm always telling you, Molly, that I'm looking forward to your documentary on your relative that started National Cash Register, because I think there's a huge psychological operation going on against corporations so that people don't want to have anything to do with them. So when you start to suggest participating in the ownership, people sort of intuitively feel, oh my God, I don't want to have this bad karma because the corporations make too many products and we consume too much and we pollute too much. So maybe that could change.
Right. No, I agree.
Do you want to include John in on this for the last 9 minutes? We can do a show.
John?
Yeah, Golino. Let me shut the tapes. I tried to get John Golino in on it. I couldn't get it, and I said, Molly, should we do this later? And she said she's so depressed about this, and I thought that's a good place to go. Don't you think, Molly, grief isn't something that's encouraged in this society? But Rosenberg talks about that too.
Well, he definitely talks about the grief work, and and I think that people sort of feel like nonviolent communication kind of turns into a dead-end street sometimes, and then he just suggests that all that's left to do is the grief work. And I think that you're right. You know, our society does not value grieving about things. I mean, and I think that that's when sort of compassion comes in a way. But I also feel like there's a certain passivity that's not very productive about grieving too. I mean, how do you feel like, that's where I think the grief work leaves you. Where does it leave you? I mean, how do you get out of that sort of nature of the grief work?
Well, what are you depressed about?
We don't really have any choices in this country, you know, that it's being run by, you know, as they were saying, two conflicting mobs of, you know, very powerful elements, and that we as individuals don't have any control over.
Well, you know, you can continue doing your work, but I mean, I think there is a choice. You know, there are two other people running, and
a vote for either of them is basically not going to have any impact.
But there's not going to really be any impact, even if you vote for either of them. Not in the fundamental sense of people regaining control of their government. I mean, I don't think, you know, with neither vote are you going to have any fundamental change in what's going on. I haven't heard of a fundamental change in the economic system.
Well, so as I said, don't you find that somewhat depressing?
I find that disheartening and obstacle-ish. At the same time, you know, if people were to vote their conscience instead of, you know, what they perceive to be the lesser of two evils, I think the result of that is the possibility of that is a reality.
To vote what is to vote your conscience?
Well, I mean, voting your conscience being just that, voting who you think stands for a really fundamental change, which really just, you know, fundamental change in my mind really means people having a more direct voice in whatever laws get struck down or get created. That's what.
Okay, well, let's put it this way. Let's say that the polls are really right and 60% of Americans still believe in the Bible literally. Do you really think that that kind of literalism is really going to advance our society?
I don't think so, no. But that doesn't mean that can't change. And I think what can
But
change
you want to
it-
give them preachers to humor them. Is that what you mean, Molly?
That's kind of another elite just pandering to, underestimating that these people are people too.
Oh, hallelujah, Molly. I so agree with you. That's why I was so annoyed at what John Galino sent me about what Howard Stern's, crank callers were doing up in Harlem, saying, what do you think about Obama? And then presenting McCain's platform and then saying, what do you think about Obama's running mate, Sarah Palin? It was just so...
Obama's running mate? I mean...
No, they were fooling people. They weren't lifting a finger to help people to understand. Like if 60% of the people believe in the literal interpretation of the Bible, are you just going to stand and laugh at them, or are you going to try to bring the Christianity that's meaningful to you forward, or something that would be productive and engage them? Maybe people are believing in this because they're so afraid and they're just gripping onto whatever they can hold.
I think that that to me explains why fundamentalism has taken a real resurgent hold on this country, is that it gives you a sense of security, which gets back to nonviolent communication, which people have a real need for security, and those kind of systems, it removes doubt from the equation.
Well, maybe there's your answer, Molly, because maybe what we have to do is, when you're talking about the depression, like at the end of the grief work, is a sense that you have your own resources to carry you through, even if it seems so dismal on the outside. And maybe that's what it takes to sort of collapse within and find that divinity inside.
I guess I'm kind of disillusioned with the whole earthly plane. It's like, I guess I don't like to have to be dependent on some system of, I don't know about creation, but to have to go and earn your daily bread and all this kind of stuff. It's just very annoying.
Well, then you should have been with us with the binary economic stuff, because it was just talking about labor unions being passé. We need ownership unions. And that there should be a time in your life where you are laboring, you're productive, with your own efforts, but then another time where you become capital workers.
But I'm not sure that people make the best decisions for the greater good when they're also just trying to look after their own interests. There becomes this sort of selfish survivalist aspect to it, where, you've got a capital interest in something, and then you're willing to sacrifice other people in order to maintain your own.
Why would that be the case?
Well, okay, so say you get two corporations in competition. If your corporation that you've got capital interest in is going to lose ground unless you sacrifice the other person, you're more willing to sacrifice the other person.
But why is that more likely to happen when you have diversified ownership instead of ownership in the hands of a few? Couldn't a few make those decisions
I'm not
too?
saying that a few wouldn't do it as well. I mean, I'm just saying that there's something about being on this earthly plane and what seems to be a finite resource pool, and that, we seem to be struggling for survival as opposed to improving the great, the whole, so to speak. I mean,
Well, you know, I think when if more people owned more things, it would be harder for a few people to own everything.
well, I agree with that.
And so that seems to be the aim, at least, of what I see of binary economics. And so, with that as the goal, it's just like the political system, right?
Right.
If you had a king, he has all the power. But so they devised a system where you have the executive, you have all three branches, right? So that all the power is not concentrated in one person.
Right.
Economically, there has to be the same systemic setup where ownership is actually dispersed. Where the laws are set up so that it's really, I was thinking that there should be a cap on personal wealth. I know, Paula, it wasn't really, I don't know if you were...
Oh, I just don't like the idea of limiting anything. Having experienced an hour-long orgasm once in my life, people think certain things are limited. So, and well, I know you...
I wouldn't outlaw the limit to which one could experience an orgasm. I think that's reaching a little bit too far. But...
no, I just think we haven't had models big enough introduced to us. Our education is so limited. So I think, to me, Molly, I'm heartened by the idea of diversified ownership, because I think there will be a pool of different strategies. Somebody will have seen something I never considered. There'll be an opportunity to share that, because that person will be available to me. He won't be in prison, or he won't be, slaving away and so terrified. Like, right now, I'm not hearing from blasting caps, and I know he was really under the gun to, he said everything was getting turned off, his electricity, his telephone. And, he was going to be reading one of the books on binary economics and helping me to produce these shows. So, I don't know. Maybe it's just the extra energy of you guys around here, but it was one of the best shows I felt with Webster.
Oh, you know what? Okay, this is the washer guys. Let me talk to them.
Okay.
I'll be.
Yeah. If you want to be.
Right. Well, yeah. It's just I've got people that I've got to return calls to.
Okay. Okay. Posr, you want to say that last thing about the guy in prison?
No, I was just thinking about it. When I was in prison from in 2006, 2007, I met a young man by the name of Esteban Geronimo, and he was accused of attempting to buy, well, along with two or three other people, they were accused of attempting to buy cocaine and distribute it. And the police officer lied about probable cause for arresting Esteban Geronimo. Now, the other people, okay, they had a history. They were watching them for like 4 months or 2 months. So, but this guy they lied on. The cop said that he was listening to a live transmission between a wired informant and Esteban Geronimo, when in fact there was no live transmission. He just lied because he needed a factual basis to base the order to arrest everybody on. He had to hear something or he had to see something. And the only way he could have heard it was if there was a live transmission. So that's the lie he told. And so the prosecutor at sentencing actually admitted that. Oh, he testified in error, right? And his defense attorney didn't say, well, wait a minute, Judge, we need to go back to the probable cause hearing now, since this officer testified in error.
Right.
Lawyer didn't do that. Guy goes to prison, gets 10 years. The facts about that lie weren't brought up by the lawyer in the trial, and the lawyer that Esteban had at sentencing gave certain arguments. Then when it came to the appeal, that same lawyer said, well, everything about the arrest was correct. He didn't even argue the stuff that he argued at sentencing, when he went to appeal. And at this point, it's like.
But what's the point about binary and him? Why are you thinking about him?
Well, I just actually was just thinking about the fact this is a great medium, right? The internet is a great medium.
That Molly wants to go.
I know you want to go, man. I'm sorry, but we only have but that's a great. But the thing was, I was just hearing about how the internet is supposed to now maybe, like in Europe, you have to pay by the minute. There's not like in Germany anyway. For the internet, to be on the internet.
Well, we're going to pay by the minute pretty soon.
Yeah, but you know how that's going to cut down on the ability of like people to reach out to people,
sure.
which is exactly what that's designed to do.
Right. So let's use it while we can, huh, Molly? Hello?
Yeah, I mean, so great. So we have this really screwed up system, and it's screwed up at a very elemental level. I mean, how do you get people to do the right thing? I don't know.
Well, I think it's going to take a meltdown before the right thing happens.
I find that in meltdowns, usually that's when everything really goes out the window.
Well, the thing is, I think you have to be prepared to have the right structure for when the meltdown occurs.
Yeah, even like depression, Molly, or if you feel like you're not going to be in such a, enthusiastic all the time, I find to make hay while the sun shines. Work while you can, and then just sort of be aware that there's cycles. There's times of less enthusiasm. There's times you're going to doubt what you're doing, and just go with that. I don't know if you'd call that actual meltdown, but maybe you can become more sensitive so it doesn't take a crisis. That's my hope. I mean, Louis Kelso, I was listening to him speak in 1984, and he was saying, if these leverage buyouts don't change from being 20 to 1, where 20 are going in the hands of very few, versus 1, which was doing it like he had set it up. He was the genius that started it, acquiring capital through the earnings of future capital. And he said it has opposite effects. 1, you'd have a company that was 75% in the hands of the employees, which would release them from corporate slavery. In the old days, the serfs on the lands back in England, or I guess France too, when royalty would trade land with each other or gamble it away, not only did the land go away, all the serfs living on the land did. And that's the same type of thing with these corporate buyouts. The people come with it. Their jobs are entrenched into those companies.
But then what happens is that they consolidate and fire people. It's like
but they consolidate for the reason of a profit. So if you had capital ownership in it, let them consolidate away. You're going to walk away with shares in it. Still, you release from slavery. That's what it's. See, when I understood that corporate slavery, that's a completely different thing than being against the corporations because they're polluting the environment and they're making products that we don't really need and they're forcing us to be consumers. It's like Robert Ashford said, you wouldn't have a problem distributing the products that you're making if you're making shoes and people are barefoot. They need those products. There's nothing wrong with consuming that. Consumption isn't the evil.
We get on a thing of this corporate slavery idea. If just plain people were owners of a company that had a choice of making a product that polluted or a product that didn't.
That's true too.
I think
that's true
most
too.
people would say, you know what, we just need to spend a little more to make this product that doesn't, feed into the greenhouse effect.
No, that's a really good point, Molly, because if you have more ownership, more people would own more, they're living in more places than someone just saying, let's pollute everything else except, what's along the Charles River. Is that what DuPont has cleaned up? I mean, it's so beautiful around there in Pennsylvania.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
But we're still part of a whole world, so diverse ownership then, I think, like Posr said, people would be more inclined to make decisions ecologically good.
It would be a good poll to run, would you vote to be a part of the Kyoto Accords? If you could vote.
That's a good point.
If you could vote, would you be a part of the International Criminal Court? The only thing I don't understand about this theory, though, is how, what are you going to make a law that anybody who works in a company can the employees can own 50%, or I don't know what the mechanism would be.
Yeah, but when people become corporate slaves, I mean, look at my friends that work in a lot of these financial institutions. They get you because they get you on, you get into profit sharing, and then you can't leave the company because the way they structure it, it means you're even worse of a slave.
I hope that Norman Curlin or Robert Ashford can listen to this, because profit sharing is not ESOP. Employee stock ownership program is not the same thing as employee stock acquisition program. And profit sharing, even with the pensions, when the pensions are invested in things that are mostly Wall Street, which is driven by commissions, you've still got a zero-sum game. Somebody's losing, somebody's gaining, minus the croupier's fee. But ownership in a corporation that's producing something means that the value increases. So it's very important to have ownership versus profit sharing. It's different.
Yeah.
Like with the stock, when you own stock, it doesn't matter where you work, or you don't have to work.
Right.
But we'll stay posted. Anyway, thanks, Molly.
All right. Well, I hope for the best, but.
Well, you know what, Molly? One thing I learned last night, that depression may be curable by looking at the sun for.
I tried it for a while.
Did it work?
Well, I didn't stick at it long enough because the leaves went back on the trees, so I couldn't get a clear line of sight. But,
hey, well, now it's coming back again, Molly.
Now I'm going to start it again.
It was a nice meeting that we had yesterday with the sun.
And also, there's one woman who's been doing the process who seems a little crazy.
Well, but everything in moderation. I mean, everyone will pick their own thing. It was nice. I'm glad Posr reminded you.
No, I think he's got a great concept, but I really think that what I was talking to you, Posr, the other night is to look at the tapes that run us, and I think enlightenment is still a better option.
Oh, but he's saying that is enlightenment.
Well, I'm just saying that to look within is a stronger path for me.
Yeah, but see, that's where I'm excited about working with Jane Goldberg and her idea about the relationship between the body and the mind. He was saying the typical thing that the body follows the mind. It's never the other way around. But I'm saying, given the choice to get up and look at the sun, once you have that energy coming into you, it's affecting your body, and then that will affect your mind. So
I agree. I think it's twofold, but I do think that if you can clear your mind, that it's a very effective way of putting everything right.
Okay, well, good luck that we all clear our minds.
Well, with this raw food that I'm eating, I'm going to the bathroom a lot more often, and I have to say that clearing my bowels does something for clearing my mind.
That was like that Steve Martin thing. They come out of the Integral Colonics Institute, and he's with this lady, and she's going, "Wow, my head feels so clean, so clear," and he goes, "I don't think you did what I just did."
That was an LA story. That was pretty funny.
Anyway, thanks, Molly.
All right. Well, we'll talk.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
That's good.